The worst moment of Patricia Vance's life didn't happen with a scream. It didn't happen with a shattered wine glass or a dramatic slap in the middle of a crowded restaurant. It happened in the hushed lavender, scented silence of Maison Blanche, the city's most exclusive bridal salon, while she was staring at her own reflection in $20,000 of hand-stitched Italian lace. Patricia smoothed the silk over her hips, admiring the way the ivory fabric caught the afternoon light at 29. And as one of the city's most sought-after interior designers, she understood structure, foundation, and beauty. This dress was perfect. It was the architectural masterpiece she would wear to marry Edgar Sterling, the charming, golden-haired heir to the Sterling real estate empire, her college sweetheart, her partner of 5 years. It's breathtaking, isn't it? The voice came from the fitting room directly next to hers. The heavy velvet curtain separating them was drawn, but sound traveled easily in the quiet salon via the shared ventilation gap near the ceiling. Patricia froze, her hand still resting on the bodice of her gown. It was Edgar's voice. Her Edgar. He was supposed to be at a board meeting across town. "Stop it, Edgar." A woman giggled, the sound breathy and low. "Somebody will hear us. Patricia's appointment is at 2. Patricia's blood turned to ice. That wasn't just any woman, that was Teresa. Her assistant, her best friend since design school. The woman who had helped her pick out this very dress last week. She's running late. Besides, she's too busy fussing over flower arrangements to suspect anything," Edgar murmured. There was the unmistakable sound of fabric rustling, a zipper sliding down. "God, I missed you. This merger has me tied to her side like a purebred show dog." Patricia stood paralyzed, her knuckles white as she gripped the velvet curtain. A show dog. "But what about the baby?" Teresa whispered, her voice tightening with anxiety. "I'm 12 weeks along, Edgar. I can't hide it much longer. My jeans don't fit." The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia felt the floor tilt beneath her satin heels. A baby. "Babe, listen to me," Edgar's voice dropped to that smooth, persuasive tone he used on investors. "We just need to get through the wedding. Once the merger with the Vance design firm is finalized and the board sees me as a stable, married man, I'll have full control of the trust. Then, Patricia becomes exactly what she is on paper, a placeholder." "A placeholder?" Teresa sounded hurt. "A necessary evil," Edgar corrected, and Patricia could practically hear the smirk in his voice. "She's brilliant at business, sure, but she's intense, boring even. You're the fun one. You're the mother of my actual child. Just let me secure the bag, sweetie. Once the ink is dry, she's nothing but a roommate with a ring." Tears pricked Patricia's eyes, hot and stinging, but she willed them back. She looked at her reflection again. The woman in the mirror wasn't boring, she was accomplished. She was loyal. And she was currently wearing a dress that cost more than Teresa's car, paid for with her own hard-earned money. 5 years of love, of supporting him through his father's death, of rewriting his speeches, of designing his developments to make him look like a visionary. All for this to be called a necessary evil by the man she built up while he got her assistant pregnant. A normal woman might have ripped open the curtain. She might have screamed, thrown a fit, and demanded answers right then and there. But Patricia Vance wasn't normal. She was a designer. She knew that, before you demolish a structure, you have to disconnect the utilities, or the whole block blows up. She took a slow, shaky breath, picked up her phone, and hit record. Most women would have torn down that velvet curtain and made a scene. Patricia, she understood that a tantrum is free entertainment, but a recording is legal ammunition. She didn't cry, she secured the asset. Remember, ladies, when you identify a structural failure in your relationship, you don't scream fire. You calmly document the arsonist holding the gasoline. Emotion is for the reception. Evidence is for the courtroom. She captured the next 30 seconds of their hushed promises and wet kisses. Then, with terrifying calm, she stopped the recording and uploaded it to her private cloud. "Patricia, are you ready for the veil?" The bridal attendant's voice chirped from the hallway. Inside the next booth, the rustling stopped instantly, dead silence. Patricia cleared her throat. She forced her voice to be light, airy, the voice of a happy, oblivious bride. "Actually, I think I'm done for today. I'm feeling a little faint, must be the diet." "Oh, of course, let me help you out," the attendant said, bustling in. Patricia stepped out of the booth, fully dressed in her street clothes, her face a perfect mask of composure. She glanced at the curtain of the neighboring booth. It was still twitching slightly. "Tell Mr. Sterling I had to run," Patricia said loudly enough for them to hear. "Something urgent came up with the accounts. I need to make some withdrawals." She walked out of the salon and into the blinding afternoon sun. She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. "Marcus, it's Patricia. I know it's been a while, but I need the meanest divorce lawyer in your firm, someone who eats trust funds for breakfast." She got into her car and checked her makeup in the rearview mirror. Her lipstick was perfect. Her eyes were hard as diamonds. "Let the games begin," she whispered to her reflection. Edgar's phone buzzed on the mahogany coffee table of their penthouse that evening. Patricia sat on the other side of the room, sipping a glass of red wine. Her legs curled beneath her on the velvet sofa. She watched him check the screen. A quick, nervous glance before shoving it back into his pocket. "Just work stuff," he said, flashing that easy, charming smile that had once made her heart flutter. Now, it made her stomach turn. "Everything okay, babe? You seem quiet." "Just thinking about the wedding," Patricia said. Faye replied smoothly, swirling the dark liquid in her glass. "The venue called. They need the final deposit by Friday, right, of course." He ran a hand through his perfect golden hair. "It's going to be perfect." Patricia set her glass down with a deliberate clink. "Actually, Edgar, there's something else. Something unromantic, but necessary." He frowned slightly. "What is it?" "My lawyer sent over the prenuptial agreement draft." The air in the room shifted instantly. Edgar stiffened. "A prenup, Patricia. We talked about this. My mother already has the family lawyers handling the trust protections. You know, I don't care about your money." "Oh, it's not about my money," Patricia lied effortlessly. She stood up and walked over to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. She could smell Teresa's perfume on his collar, a cheap floral scent she recognized immediately. It took every ounce of her willpower not to recoil. "It's about protecting you." Edgar looked confused. "My business is taking on some risky new projects," she explained, her voice steady. "If things go south, I don't want your family's assets to be liable for my debts. It's a standard clause my partners insisted on to keep the board happy." Edgar's expression relaxed. "Patricia, you always worry too much. But if it makes you feel better, there is one other thing," Patricia interrupted gently. She pulled a thick document from her bag and slid it across the table. Her fingers lingered on the cover page. "To make it fair, my lawyer added a standard infidelity clause. You know, just legal jargon to balance the risk." Edgar laughed, a hollow sound. "Infidelity, babe. Come on. You know you're the only woman for me." "Of course I do," Patricia cooed, looking him straight in the eyes. "That's why it shouldn't be a problem to sign it, right? It's just paperwork, a formality to show my investors I'm serious about stability." He hesitated for a fraction of a second. His gaze flickered to the document, then back to her face. He was arrogant. He was used to getting what he wanted. He probably thought he was too smart to ever get caught, especially by boring Patricia. What he didn't know was that the standard clause on page 14 was a lethal weapon. It stated clearly, in the event of proven infidelity by either party prior to the marriage, the offending party forfeits all voting rights in any joint business ventures and assumes full liability for wedding cancellation costs. More importantly, it had a rider attached to his family trust distributions, something his mother would have caught instantly had he bothered to send it to her lawyers first. But Edgar was lazy, and he was desperate to get back to texting Teresa. "Fine," he sighed, uncapping a pen with a flourish. "If it gets your partners off our backs, I'll sign whatever you want. I love you, Patricia." He scribbled his signature on the line without reading a single word of the fine print. Arrogance is a terrible sedative, isn't it? Edgar was so busy patting himself on the back for handling the boring wife that he signed his own death warrant with a smile. He thought he was signing a formality. He was actually authorizing a hostile takeover. Never underestimate a woman who reads the fine print while you are busy checking your texts. He didn't just sign a prenup. He signed a confession. Patricia watched the ink dry. It looked like a death sentence. "There," he said, tossing the pen down. "Happy, thrilled," she whispered. She picked up the document, her hands perfectly steady. "I'll file this first thing in the morning." Just then, his phone buzzed again. He glanced at it and stood up abruptly. "I have to take this call. It's the London office. Don't wait up." He walked out onto the balcony, closing the glass door behind him. Through the glass, Patricia watched him pull out his phone and dial. She knew exactly who he was calling. The London office was currently sleeping in a shoebox apartment in Queens, probably eating pickles and waiting for his attention. Patricia picked up her wine glass again. She walked to the window and looked out at the glittering New York skyline. The city was full of secrets, but tonight she held the most dangerous one of all. She took a photo of the signed document and sent it to her lawyer, Marcus. "It's done," she typed. "Start the clock." Her reflection in the window stared back at her, cold, elegant, and utterly terrifying. "To our future, darling," she murmured the silence. The trap had clicked shut. Now, she just had to wait for him to step on the trigger. And knowing Edgar, he wouldn't be able to help himself. The next morning, the Sterling Vance offices were buzzing with the frantic energy of a Monday. Patricia walked in looking every inch the boss, tailored cream suit, hair pulled back in a severe chic chignon, and holding a double-shot espresso like a weapon. "Good morning, Patricia." Teresa chirped from the front desk. Patricia paused. She looked at her assistant, really looked at her, for the first time since the bridal shop. Teresa looked tired. There were faint circles under her eyes, hastily covered with concealer, and she was wearing a loose, fitting blouse that hid her waistline. "Morning, Teresa," Patricia said, her voice betraying nothing. "Did you finalize the guest list for the charity gala?" "Yes, I just sent it to the printer." Teresa smiled, that wide, innocent smile that Patricia used to find endearing. Now, it just looked predatory. "Oh, and Edgar stopped by earlier. He forgot his iPad for the presentation." "Did he?" Patricia's eyes flicked to the sleek silver device sitting on the corner of Teresa's desk. "He's so forgetful lately. The stress of the merger must be getting to him." "Yeah, he seemed really stressed," Teresa said, casting a sympathetic glance at the iPad. "I told him you'd bring it to the meeting later." "Perfect, I'll take it." Patricia swiped the iPad off the desk before Teresa could protest. "Thanks, Teresa. Oh, and send me the floral budget breakdown again. I want to double-check something." She walked into her office and shut the door, clicking the lock. The blinds were drawn. She sat down at her desk, her heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm against her ribs. This wasn't just about catching a cheater anymore. This was about survival. Patricia had designed the security protocols for the entire office network. She knew Edgar's passwords because he used the same 3 variations for everything: his birthday, his mother's birthday, or the name of his first dog. She tried Boost 123 Reels. The iPad unlocked instantly, idiot. She didn't go for the texts first. That was amateur hour. She went straight to the cloud sync settings. Photos, notes, calendar invites, everything was linked. She scrolled back, her eyes scanning dates. There it was, 6 months ago. The weekend of her birthday trip to Napa, the one Edgar had missed because of an emergency board meeting. Photos of a hotel room in Miami, not a boardroom. A picture of 2 champagne glasses on a balcony. A selfie of Edgar and Teresa, their faces pressed together. Teresa wearing a diamond necklace Patricia had never seen before. "Happy 3 months, baby," the caption read. It was saved in a hidden folder labeled Project X. Patricia felt bile rise in her throat. 3 months, they had been together for 6.5 years. While she was planning their life, he was buying Teresa diamonds with. She paused, zooming in on the receipt in the next photo. The credit card number visible on the receipt ended in 8,842. That wasn't Edgar's personal card. That was the Sterling Vance joint corporate account. The one meant for operational expenses. Patricia let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. He was expensing his affair. He was literally making her pay for the hotel room where he cheated on her. This wasn't just infidelity. This was embezzlement. She started screenshotting everything, airdropping the files to her secure, personal drive, hotel bills, jewelry receipts, Uber rides to Teresa's apartment at 2 a.m. logged as client transport. The evidence was staggering. It wasn't a mistake. It was a lifestyle. Then she found the Notes app, a shared note between Edgar and Teresa titled Escape Plan. Once the merger closes, we use the bonus to buy the house in the Hamptons. Patricia will be too busy with the new contract to notice if I take a sabbatical. Baby name ideas. Oliver, Sophia, Patricia put the iPad down. Her hands were shaking, not from sadness, but from a rage so pure, it felt like clarity. She had been building a life with a man who was actively plotting to dismantle her, using her own assistant as the wrecking ball. Later that evening, Patricia sat at a long candlelit table in the private dining room of Le Bernardin, across from her SAT Victoria Sterling, Edgar's mother, the matriarch of the family, and a woman who had ice water in her veins. The flower arrangements need to be white roses, Patricia, Victoria was saying, cutting her fish with surgical precision. Anything else is tacky. Of course, Victoria, Patricia said, smiling thinly. And I hope you've spoken to Edgar about the timeline for heirs, Victoria continued, not looking up. The Sterling Trust has stipulations about the next generation. We can't wait forever. Edgar, sitting next to Patricia, choked slightly on his wine. He patted his chest, his face flushing. Mother, please. Not at dinner. It's a valid question, Patricia said casually, picking up her water glass. Actually, Edgar and I were just discussing timelines. Weren't we, darling? She turned to him, her eyes wide and innocent. Maybe we'll have news sooner than everyone expects. Life is full of surprises. Edgar went pale. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a ghost. He stared at Patricia, panic flickering in his eyes. Did she know? Was she hinting at Teresa? Surprises are for birthdays. Victoria snapped. I prefer plans. Oh, don't worry, Patricia said, her gaze locking onto Edgar's terrified face. I have a plan, a very detailed one. She took a sip of water, watching a bead of sweat trickle down Edgar's temple. I've been doing a lot of digging lately. You'd be amazed at what lies beneath the foundation if you look hard enough. The table went silent. Edgar looked like he was about to vomit. Is something wrong, Edgar? Patricia asked sweetly. You haven't touched your sea bass. I need to use the restroom, he stammered, practically stumbling out of his chair. As he fled the table, Patricia turned back to Victoria, who was watching her with narrowed, calculating eyes. He's been working so hard, Patricia said with a sigh. I worry he's taking on more than he can handle. Victoria hummed, her eyes sharp. Edgar has always been easily distracted. I hope you're keeping him on a tight leash, Patricia. Patricia smiled, a genuine, terrifying smile. Oh, the leash is tight, Victoria, and I'm about to yank it. The next day, the atmosphere in the office was brittle. Edgar was hiding in site meetings all day, cowardice masquerading as productivity. That left Teresa alone in the line of fire. At 4 p.m., Patricia pressed the intercom button on her desk. Teresa, can you come in, please, and bring the Sterling account reconciliations? Through the glass wall of her office, Patricia watched Teresa hesitate. The younger woman looked pale, her hand hovering over her stomach for a brief second before she grabbed a folder and walked in. Hey, Patricia, Teresa said, her voice trembling slightly. You wanted to see me. Sit down, Teresa. Close the door. Patricia didn't look up from her computer screen immediately. She let the silence stretch, heavy and suffocating, until Teresa shifted uncomfortably in the leather chair. Finally, Patricia turned, clasping her hands on the desk. We have a problem, Patricia said softly. Is it about the flowers? Teresa asked, her eyes darting around the room. It's about the forensic audit I ordered this morning. Teresa stopped breathing. Patricia slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. It was a breakdown of the expenses she had discovered yesterday, the hotel rooms, the jewelry, the client dinners that were actually room service for two. But Patricia had highlighted only one thing, user ID C. Daniels. The auditors found over $50,000 in unauthorized expenses properly logged under your administrative credentials. Teresa, Patricia lied smoothly. It was true that Teresa booked them, but Edgar had authorized them. Patricia just needed to twist the knife. Technically, this is grand larceny, corporate embezzlement. Teresa's eyes welled with tears instantly. Patricia, I didn't take that money from me. The paper trail says otherwise, Patricia said, her voice devoid of sympathy. Expensive hotels, jewelry stores. It looks bad, Teresa, especially since you're currently pregnant. Teresa froze. How did you know? I have eyes, Patricia said coldly. Does Edgar know? Teresa nodded, tears spilling over. Yes, it's his. Patricia stood up and walked to the window, her back to Teresa. She needed to hide the triumph in her eyes. So, let me get this straight. My fiancé gets my assistant pregnant. Then he uses my company's money to fund the affair. But here's the interesting part. Teresa, he used your login to book everything. She turned back, her face a mask of pity. He didn't use his own credentials, Teresa. He used yours. Do you know what that looks like to a lawyer? Teresa shook her head, sobbing quietly. It looks like he set you up, Patricia said, planting the seed of poison. If this goes to court, Edgar has the Sterling family lawyers. They'll claim you were an obsessed employee stealing funds to seduce him. He'll walk away clean, claiming he was a victim of entrapment. And you'll go to prison with a baby born in a cell. He wouldn't, Teresa whispered. But her voice lacked conviction. She remembered the show dog comment. She remembered how dismissive he had been lately. "He called you a placeholder to me, Teresa." "Oh wait, no. He called me the placeholder to you," Patricia corrected, walking closer. "But actions speak louder. He protected his name on those receipts. He didn't protect yours." Patricia leaned against the edge of the desk, looking down at the weeping woman. "I can stop the audit. I can make this go away. I can even ensure you get a severance package that takes care of you and that baby." Teresa looked up, hope warring with fear. Why would you do that?" "Because I don't blame the tool, Teresa. I blame the mechanic who used it." Patricia handed her a tissue. "But I need something in return. I need insurance." "Anything," Teresa choked out. "I need you to forward me every single email, text, and voice note you have from Edgar. Every promise he made, every time he told you to use the company card, every time he bashed his family or me. I want it all." "He'll kill me," Teresa whispered. "No," Patricia said firmly. "He won't touch you, because if you give me what I need, I'm going to destroy him so thoroughly, he won't be able to hurt a fly. But if you protect him, I hand this file to the police in 10 minutes." It took Teresa less than 3 seconds to choose. Survival instinct was a powerful thing. "I have a hidden folder," Teresa sniffled, pulling out her phone. "And I recorded him. Last week, when he told me he was moving money from the offshore accounts to hide it from the IRS before the merger." Patricia's eyebrows shot up. She had gone fishing for infidelity and embezzlement, and she had hooked tax fraud. "Send it," Patricia commanded. As the files started populating Patricia's inbox, audio files, screenshots, PDFs, Patricia felt a dark sense of satisfaction. She had just stripped Edgar of his only ally. "Go home, Teresa," Patricia said, once the transfer was complete. "Pack a bag. Go stay with your mother in Jersey. Do not answer Edgar's calls. If he asks, tell him you're sick. Leave the rest to me." Teresa fled the office like the building was on fire. Patricia sat back down in her leather chair. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across her desk. Her phone pinged. It was Edgar. "Hey babe, sorry I missed you. Brutal day, dinner tonight. Just us, love you." Patricia stared at the message. She didn't reply. Instead, she opened the file Teresa had just sent her. IRS Fahide Fakeland, MP3. She forwarded it to Marcus, her lawyer, with a 2-word subject line, "Nuclear option." The wedding was in 3 days. The board meeting to finalize the merger and give Edgar control of the trust was scheduled for the morning of the ceremony. It was going to be a very busy weekend. The rehearsal dinner was held in the conservatory of the Sterling family estate in Greenwich. It was a glass cathedral filled with orchids, tuxedoed waiters, and people who measured their self-worth in net assets. Patricia wore a dress of liquid silver that clung to her frame like a second skin. She moved through the crowd with the grace of a queen and the precision of an assassin. Every laugh was calculated. Every touch of her hand on an investor's arm was strategic. Edgar, by contrast, was unraveling. He stood by the open bar, nursing his 3rd scotch. His eyes kept darting to his phone, then to the entrance, then back to his phone. Patricia knew why. Teresa hadn't responded to a single text in 24 hours. "He looks like he's waiting for an executioner," Victoria Sterling murmured, appearing at Patricia's elbow. The matriarch wore black, an odd choice for a rehearsal dinner, but fitting for her personality. "Just wedding jitters, Victoria," Patricia replied, taking a sip of sparkling water. "Tomorrow is a big day, the merger, the wedding, it's a lot of pressure." Victoria turned her steel, gray gaze onto Patricia. "You seem remarkably calm. considering you're marrying into this circus. I thrive under pressure, Patricia smiled. Besides, I believe in preparation. If you've done your homework, there's nothing to survive. Victoria studied her for a long, uncomfortable moment. For the first time, Patricia saw a flicker of respect, or perhaps fear, in the older woman's eyes. Make sure he signs those merger documents correctly tomorrow morning, Patricia. If the stock dips because of his incompetence, I will hold you personally responsible. Don't worry, Patricia said, her voice dropping an octave. I'm going to ensure Edgar gets exactly what he deserves. Patricia excused herself and glided toward Edgar. As she approached, he shoved his phone into his pocket, forcing a smile that didn't reach his panic-stricken eyes. Hey, beautiful, he slurped slightly. Have you heard from Teresa? I need the final head count for the reception. Oh, didn't I tell you? Patricia lied, picking a piece of lint off his lapel. She emailed me this morning. Poor thing comes down with a terrible viral infection. She's in the hospital, or was it her mother? Someone is very sick. She's completely unreachable. Edgar's face went gray. Hospital. Yes, she said she'd be offline for at least a week. Shame she'll miss the wedding. Patricia patted his cheek. But don't worry about work, darling. I've handled everything for the board meeting tomorrow. You just have to show up and perform. Perform, Edgar muttered, loosening his tie. Right. Actually, I have a gift for you. Patricia reached into her silver clutch and pulled out a long velvet box. Edgar took it, his hands clumsy. He opened it to reveal a Mont Blanc fountain pen inlaid with platinum. It belonged to my grandfather, Patricia said softly. He used it to sign his first major contract. I want you to use it tomorrow morning at the board meeting to sign the merger papers. Edgar stared at the pen. For a moment, the guilt seemed to weigh on him, or perhaps it was just the fear of the unknown. Patricia, you really are too good to me. I'm exactly the wife you need, Edgar, she whispered, leaning in to kiss his cheek. You'll realize that soon. She pulled away and tapped her glass with a spoon. The room fell silent. A toast, Patricia announced, raising her glass. Her voice carried clearly through the conservatory. To Edgar, the man who taught me that love isn't just about emotion. It is about transparency. It is about trust. And most importantly, it is about consequences. The crowd chuckled, thinking it was a witty bridal joke. Edgar laughed too, nervously. Tomorrow, Patricia continued, locking eyes with him, we start a new chapter 1 where everything comes to light, to the groom. To the groom. The room echoed. Edgar drank. Patricia didn't. The morning of the wedding, the sun rose over Manhattan, crisp and unforgiving. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. at the Sterling, Vance headquarters. The wedding ceremony was at 2 p.m. Edgar arrived at the office looking like death warmed over. His skin was pasty, and he smelled faintly of mouthwash and fear. He walked into the boardroom, expecting to see the usual dozen faces of the board of directors. Instead, the room was packed. Not just the board. There were lawyers, lots of lawyers. 2 men in dark suits sat in the corner. Patricia recognized them immediately as forensic accountants she had hired, but next to them sat 3 agents with federal badges clipped to their belts. And at the head of the table sat Patricia. She wasn't wearing white. She was wearing a blood-red power suit, her hair slicked back, looking sharp enough to cut glass. Patricia. Edgar stopped in the doorway, confused. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be getting ready. It's bad luck to see the bride before the ceremony. There isn't going to be a ceremony, Edgar, Patricia stated calmly. She didn't stand up. The room was deathly silent. Victoria Sterling sat to Patricia's right, looking like she had turned to stone. What are you talking about? Edgar laughed nervously, looking around the room for support. Is this a joke? Please take a seat, Patricia gestured to the empty chair at the opposite end of the long table. It felt miles away. Edgar sat. He looked at his mother. Mom. Victoria didn't look at him. She was staring at a dossier in front of her, her face pale. We aren't here for the merger vote, Edgar, Patricia began, clasping her hands on the table. We are here to discuss the immediate termination of your position as CEO and the dissolution of your trust fund status. You can't do that, Edgar snapped, finding a shred of arrogance. I control the voting shares as of today. That was the deal. The deal was contingent on the prenuptial agreement, Patricia said. Specifically, the morality clause regarding infidelity. She pressed a button on the laptop in front of her. The large screen behind her flickered to life. A photo appeared, Edgar and Teresa in Miami. Then another, a receipt for a diamond necklace. A transcript of a text message. She's just a cash cow, babe. Once I get the trust money, she's gone. A collective gasp went through the room. Edgar froze, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. That is faked, he stammered. That is AI deepfakes. Is the voice recording fake too? Patricia asked. She clicked play. Edgar's voice filled the room, clear as day. Moved the $2 million to the Cayman Shell Company. Start booking the losses under Patricia's department. If the IRS comes looking, they'll look at her, not me. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating, and absolute. Edgar looked at the agents in the corner. One of them stood up and adjusted his jacket. Edgar Sterling, the agent said, walking toward him. I am Special Agent Miller with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Patricia, Edgar pleaded, standing up, his chair scraping violently against the floor. Patricia, baby, please. We can fix this. I love you. Patricia watched him with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a bug under a microscope. You don't love me, Edgar, she said, her voice devoid of anger. You loved the safety I provided, but you forgot one thing. She picked up the platinum fountain pen, the gift she had given him the night before, which was sitting on the table in front of her. You signed the prenup, she said, and because of the infidelity clause you triggered, your voting rights for this morning's meeting automatically transferred to me. She looked at the board members, all those in favor of terminating Edgar Sterling for cause and cooperating fully with the federal investigation. Every hand in the room went up. Even Victoria's Patricia smiled. Motion carried. As the agents moved in to handcuff Edgar, he looked at his mother, then at Patricia. He looked small, a child caught in a lie. Why, he whispered as they turned him around. Why did you let it go this far? Patricia stood up, smoothing the front of her red suit. She walked over to him, leaning close, so only he could hear. Because, darling, she whispered, I didn't just want to leave you. I wanted to beat you. This is the difference between a breakup and an eviction. Patricia didn't just want to walk away. She wanted to ensure he couldn't follow her because his legs and his bank accounts were broken. She turned the altar into a tribunal and proved that the only vow that truly mattered wasn't to love and to cherish, but to audit and to terminate. That, my dears, is how you clean house. She turned to the stunned room. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a wedding to cancel and a company to run. News of Edgar Sterling's arrest hit the New York Post website before the handcuffs were fully secured. The headline was brutal. Vows and violations. Sterling heir arrested at own wedding rehearsal for massive tax fraud. But Patricia wasn't reacting to the news cycle. She was curating it. While Edgar was being processed at the federal courthouse, Patricia was standing in the center of the grand ballroom at the Plaza Hotel. The room was a masterpiece of white roses and crystal, filled with 300 of New York's elite who were currently murmuring in confused hushes. They had come for a wedding. They were stayed for the drama. Patricia stepped up to the microphone where the band was supposed to be playing their first dance. She had not changed out of her crimson suit. It was a stark, violent splash of color against the pristine white decor. Ladies and gentlemen, her voice rang out, steady and amplified. The room went silent instantly. I know you are all checking your phones, Patricia said, a dry smile touching her lips. And yes, the rumors are true. There will be no wedding today. A ripple of gasps moved through the crowd. However, Patricia continued, her voice gaining strength, the merger between Sterling Industries and Vance Media was successfully ratified this morning. The company is stronger than it has ever been, and as the newly appointed interim CEO, I didn't want this beautiful champagne to go to waste. She gestured to the waiters who stood frozen by the walls. Pour the Bollinger, the food is paid for, the band is paid for, and I am in a celebrating mood. For a moment, no one moved. Then a single person started clapping. It was Victoria Sterling. The matriarch stood near the front, looking impeccable and unbothered. She clapped slowly, rhythmically, her eyes locked on Patricia. Slowly, the rest of the room followed suit. The confusion morphed into admiration. Patricia hadn't been left at the altar. She had cleared the altar. As the band struck up a jazz standard and the guests awkwardly began to mingle, realizing this was now a networking event rather than a nuptial one, Victoria approached Patricia. You have ice in your veins, my dear, Victoria said, taking a flute of champagne from a passing tray. I learned from the best, Patricia replied, clinking her glass against Victoria's. Edgar called me from the detention center. Victoria said, her voice dropping, he needs bail money, and a lawyer who specializes in federal RICO cases. I assume you told him the family assets are currently frozen pending the audit, Patricia asked innocently. I did. Victoria took a sip. I also told him that since he is no longer an employee of Sterling Vance, he doesn't qualify for corporate legal counsel. Patricia felt a chill of respect for the older woman. Victoria was cutting off her own son to save the empire. He'll accept a plea deal, Patricia predicted. He doesn't have the stamina for a trial. He'll turn on anyone he can to reduce his sentence. Let him, Victoria waved a hand dismissively. The board is behind you, Patricia. You saved the stock price from plummeting by taking control immediately. The narrative isn't corruption at Sterling. It is new leadership cleans house. It's brilliant spin. It's not spin, Victoria, Patricia said, her eyes hard. It's content optimization. 2 weeks later, Patricia sat in the corner office that used to be Edgar's. The decor had changed. The heavy mahogany and leather were gone, replaced by sleek glass, modern art, and open space. Teresa had resigned officially via email. Patricia had approved a generous severance package enough to cover medical bills and a fresh start in another state. Under a customized NDA, Teresa would never speak of the affair or the company again. It was a loose end tied in a neat bow. Patricia opened her laptop. Her team had just sent over the monthly engagement report for the company's digital channels. Engagement up 200%. Sentiment analysis, positive most, used keywords, strong, decisive, transparent. The public loved a comeback story. They loved a woman who took the bricks thrown at her and built a fortress. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I know it was you who tipped off the IRS about the offshore accounts. You ruined my life. It was Edgar. He must have gotten a burner phone, or perhaps he was out on bail. Patricia didn't feel fear. She didn't feel sadness. She felt bored. She didn't block the number. That would be defensive. Instead, she typed a quick reply. I didn't ruin your life, Edgar. I just edited it. You were bad content. She hit send, then turned her phone face down. A knock at the door. Miss Vance, the shareholders are waiting in the conference room for the Q3 projection meeting. Patricia stood up. She smoothed her skirt, checked her reflection in the glass, and smiled. It wasn't the smile of a bride or a girlfriend or an assistant. It was the smile of the author who had just finished writing the final chapter. Let's go, she said. I have a story to tell them. Let's discuss the insult that started it all. Placeholder, Edgar called Patricia. A placeholder because she was stable, reliable, and frankly, the adult in the room. Men like Edgar mistake stability for boredom because they are addicted to the chaos of their own making. They think the woman who organizes the floral budget is uninspiring until the IRS comes knocking. Patricia proved that the placeholder is actually the one holding the pen, and the one holding the pen writes the ending. She didn't ruin his life. She just edited him out of the script because he was a poorly written character. So I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever been called boring or too serious by a partner who was actually just disorganized and reckless? Did you realize later that your boring was actually the only thing keeping their life together? Tell me about the time you stopped managing their chaos and let them fall. I'll be reading. Madam, read out.